Right? Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the PacTrans and CATC joint seminar on workforce development. This is also our guest lecture for CEE 327, the University of Washington Civil and Environmental Engineering's Junior Transportation course. We're very happy to have two very distinguished speakers come to talk to our audience today. We have Professor Dennis Truax and also Mr. Roger Millar. Our lecture today is organized this way. We have two different sessions. The first one is each speaker will share their vision about future of civil engineering and the future of transportation. And the second session will be fireside chat. So we'll be happy to take questions from the audience. I'm Yin-Tai Wang. I'm a professor at the University of Washington, also director of the PacTrans Center and the instructor of CEE 327 this quarter. So let's get this started. And we would like to invite our first speaker, Professor Dennis Truax. He's a professor emeritus at Mississippi State University. He made huge contributions to our society, particularly American Society of Civil Engineers. He served as the president 2 years ago. And he's a licensed professional engineer, specialized in environmental and water resources engineering, leading consulting firms, managing environmental projects globally, and collaborating with governmental agencies on policy development and research. You can see Professor Truax's experience is very rich, right? So he's on a different field, not transportation, but certainly he oversees a lot of the future issues in civil engineering with both professor's experience and industry experience. Now let's welcome Professor Dennis Truax to share his vision in about 30 minutes.
I've got to spend 13 minutes, so we're going to have a roll from that. Because I cut it down from 2 days. And just so that I do establish some level of, no pun intended, street cred, I was also the director of the Mississippi Transportation Research Center for a decade. So transportation, other than the fact that I've driven everything from a semi down to a motorcycle and everything in between, literally everything in between, I have an abiding relationship with transportation systems, though if you go all the way back and search for my background, I do indicate that my abiding affinity is actually rail rather than road. But we'll let that go, and let me jump into this. We'll try and, let's see, advance. Yes, we have a winner. Okay. I can be taught. What I want to try and do with you is share some of the work that ASC's been doing for arguably 30 years on workforce development. I actually served on the first committee ASC put together on curriculum and career development back in the early 90s. And to put all that information together, we were actually competing with ITE, taking two different approaches to try and address the workforce effort. And you'll be pleased, or unpleased to know, that we were absolutely unsuccessful in everything that we did on both sides of that fence. And so we started again in the early 2000s, and we're starting again. But what I want to share with you that came out of that is some of the information that we garnered, and it led to some of the things that ASC has done, is doing, and will be doing in an effort to try and help you get a vision as to where you can fit in to the future of what your career is going to be and what society needs. I throw this slide up, one of many that I have to choose from, in part because it communicates an important thing that people don't recognize. And that is that by the end of the next 30 years or so, roughly 85% of all the population on the planet is going to be living in an urban environment. Okay? Now, as a result of that, ASE focused a lot on 5 different communities, and I suggest you go to futureworldvision.org. That is the website, futureworldvision.org, no dots or anything else. It'll come up in a second on another slide. To look at what we see and what we envision as this. But that doesn't take anything away from the 15% that aren't going to live in those environments. Also recognize we have issues of resource availability. Everybody's moving to the city because they think resources are there. They aren't. Because the resources can sustain them, they can't. And the people that solve that problem are you, because I'm at another end of my career than you are. If you question, and I don't think too many people do these days, the issues of how the climate is changing, I asked in the whole that somebody in the room maybe recognizes the picture to the far left. Anybody know what that's a picture of? Okay. It is Victoria Falls, southern Zambia on the Zambezi River, right at the corner of Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. And I know that I throw the EWB in the corner because I worked with ASE to reestablish EWB, and then later became a faculty advisor for EWB, and then proceeded to take groups of students to southern Zambia to put in water supply as part of EWB. The question then becomes, what's the difference between picture 1 and picture 2, the one that overlaps it? Because it is, in fact, exactly the same place on the planet. The only difference is a temporal change in that the first picture is from 2016 and the second picture is from 2019. We're not talking about centuries here, we're talking about decades. In fact, in Zambia, they had one rain event in 2019, and the Zambezi River basically dried up. How do you address design for that kind of stochastic variation? I don't know, you better. Pictures to the right, by the way, happen to be water supplies, same year, 16 and 19 for the same community of 350 people. Excuse me, I said 600. 350 people relied on that same hole in the ground for drinking water. Left one, not so great. One on the right, I'd be looking someplace else to live. The UN recognized this problem and developed the UN sustainability goals, which are represented on the figure. At this point, I ask you to quickly scan the 17 blocks that are there. Time's up. Which of these blocks does not relate to civil engineering in some way? Exactly. They all do. This is part of our profession. This is who we are. If you want to make change in the future, if you want to change the society or the planet you live on, this is how we do it, and you're the people that are expected to step up. About roughly 8 years ago, give or take, less than a decade ago, let's do it that way. ASE brought subject area experts into Reston, both through telecommunications and physically, to have a conversation about what the future of infrastructure in the world is going to be. And Future World Vision that I mentioned before, and there's the website address again if you wish. You're welcome to take photos of anything that I'm throwing up here. It's all public domain. That it will give you the result of that. What they basically said was we have to deal with resource development, we have to deal with population, we have to deal with all of these issues that nobody's talking about. We have to do it in a way that is sustainable, because the planet will not let us do things the way we did when I was your age. When I was your age, the biggest thing we debated was which equations of 3 different models to use in designing a wastewater treatment plant. I worked for a consulting firm where the municipality came and said, we need to guarantee that you're going to get 92% removal of this contaminant. And we went, okay, we lose the job if we don't do it, but the reality is we have no idea what's coming out of this. We're doing our best guess. That's long gone. That science has matured to the point where I can give you 99% guarantee, and I've actually had treatment plants that have gotten 100% removal because of the understanding of the science. The science has changed, the planet has changed, the environment has changed, and we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring because it's changing too. And that is your problem, not mine, because I'm going to sit back and watch what you do. Most recently, we launched, like last month, in a number of IMAX 3D movie houses in science centers around the planet. Literally, the movie centers for cities for the future. And this will culminate, the book talks about cities, it really culminates about what we see at ASE, what we see the future of this profession really needing to be.
Imagine a world where life on Earth is totally sustainable. Solar energy powers entire cities. Flying cars travel on highways in the sky. This isn't science fiction. The creators of Dream Big invite you on a journey into the future. Where today's engineers are designing solutions that will change the way we live forever. From electric flying taxis and aerial highways, to greener buildings and infrastructure, to solar energy captured in space that will provide clean energy 24 hours a day. Welcome to the future. Discover a new vision of hope for the world. And see tomorrow as our greatest opportunity. Cities of the future.
Just
A
over.
film for IMAX and giant screen theaters.
Yeah, okay. Just over 20% of that is CG. The rest of that is real time. Though I've advanced the slide, and I'm not going to back over, we'll get back in that movie. Can you imagine a building? Yeah, okay, I'm not an environmental. Can you imagine a building? A building that generates its own power, generates its own water, treats its own waste, manages its own storm supply, manages its own environment, manages the environment for you, and removes carbon dioxide from the air at an equivalency of about 50,000 trees per year. Does that sound like a building you see today? Well, it's been a building that's been on the planet for 9 years in Singapore. Okay? Not so much in the US, but across the globe, sustainable structures, whatever they represent, are something that is being embraced. And the people that are going to bring that sustainable infrastructure to market, to fruition, to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public, will be people sitting in this room and your colleagues. What's your future? What's ahead of you? I suspect that if I asked you today, you probably have an idea of what you want to do when you graduate. You may have an idea. Let me tell you from my experience as department head and later director of the Little School of Civil Environment Engineering at Mississippi State, roughly 30% of the students who graduated from my program changed careers within the first 5 years. And I'm not talking about changing from civil into marketing. I'm talking about changing from geotech into environmental, or vice versa, or some combination thereof. In fact, what they really found was that the program prepared them quite well to become systems engineers, to be able to work omnipotently and cohesively between different areas to bring multifaceted projects to the area that they're working in, to serve the public that they're working for. So where do you see yourselves in 5 years? How are you going to get there? Where are you going to be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now as you move through your career? What are your life goals? And I hope part of it, at least in part, besides making a butt ton of money, is having fun and changing lives for the better. I mean, recognize that even the medical profession says that civil engineers have a greater impact on the health and well-being of the public than the medical profession does. We fail, we kill dozens, if not thousands. They fail. Next patient, please. So, with that, I want to give you 4 challenges. There are dozens upon dozens of them, but I want to talk about 4 challenges you're going to have to face. The first one I've already introduced, the concept of sustainability. But I ask you, what does sustainability mean to you? How do you characterize sustainability? I've got good friends who are working on mass timber structures, and when I ask them how long does the timber last, they say 50 years, to which my immediate response is, and how long does concrete last? Okay? So sustainability, the fact that the structure they're building, 30 stories high, is coming from a renewable resource that has to be replaced every 50 years. For that matter, we don't even build our homes with except a 20-year design life, given the cheap wood we used to build them out of anymore. So, my admonition to you is, think about life cycle. Think about life cycle in the comprehensive cradle to grave. Yes, that's an environmental engineering term that we've been using for 3 decades, because we as environmental engineers have been talking about sustainability for 3 decades. The idea of from cradle to grave, start to finish, and characterizing the parameters important. Carbon, as an example. Maybe water, as an example. I'm an advocate for using water as a monetary resource and how we allocate water and use it, because it's essential. But so is atmosphere. Okay, so let's talk about carbon. Quick test. Which of these generates more carbon dioxide? Growing vegetables in the field and taking it fresh to market, or growing vegetables in the field, taking it to an industrial plant, processing it, canning it, and transporting it? Don't get an answer. This is not audience participation. Have your answer in mind? Good. Because one thing I want to warn you about is the way I generally try and educate is by getting you to come up with the wrong answer and then showing you why you're wrong. And I'll start off by pointing out this is a tomato harvest. See what fraction of those tomatoes would you want to eat? Yeah, the answer is all of them, because this is the way tomatoes are harvested. They're harvested green because they can be managed green. They mature in refrigerator trucks, and they mature in the transportation process. Okay? And as such, this is what you harvest. And as a result, in the upper left-hand figure, what you see is that because of the fact that for fresh tomatoes, they have to be aesthetically pleasing, screw the nutrition, they have to be aesthetically pleasing, you throw 40% of them away and turn them back into the soil and till them again using carbon to generate the energy to run the vehicles to do that. And then during the post-harvest processing, when you're having to package and pick and pluck and do all the rest of this, because you're trying to keep them pristine, pure in appearance, you throw another 40% away, and that's what you ship to market. And then the shipping process, because of what it takes to ship these, you have to refrigerate them, you have to let them mature, you have to let them grow, the refrigerator houses they go into. Yeah, you get the idea. When it's all said and done, grinding them up, letting them mature in a can, which has a smaller volume for the same amount of tomatoes that get shipped, has about 25% less carbon output. Okay? Conventional wisdom doesn't play out. Okay? So it takes time to think, and this is all I'm advocating for. I need you to be, we need you to be, society needs you to be critical thinkers. And a critical thinker is somebody who's constantly questioning their truths and constantly reevaluating their data set. Second thing, this post-COVID workplace that you're going to move into at some point in your life, and the workforce disruption that it caused, has really not shaken down completely. There's a number of failed support systems that exist that were there for people in the old days, 2018, 2019, that don't exist anymore. Expectations of showing up to work and being part of their teams and communicating in committees. And I'm not saying that's bad or good. I'm just saying it's different, and the workplace hasn't morphed or adapted to it. What I will emphasize for you, as mostly Gen Zers sitting in this room, coming into the workplace, because Gen Y is already up there screwing things up, and Gen X could care less, and we boomers, we're retired. I'm not telling you anything unless you pay me $800 an hour for consulting. Seriously? We'll talk later about the bill. The idea is that with that, what's worse is you were brought up wrong. Your parents screwed up your education. You think you're winners. You're not. You think you're special. You aren't. You're average. Until you decide you no longer want to be average. There's no inherent God-given right entitlement that says you're better than anybody else sitting next to you. You're here because you excelled behind that riffraff that you left behind at high school or wherever you came from. But you're just average here, folks, unless you make yourself better. The challenge is the workforce hasn't recognized that. They're not geared up to help you become better. You expect to be praised for sharpening a pencil. It ain't happening. You expect to be praised because the project's finished. Won't happen. You want daily reminders of how great you are. Ain't happening. You're great, but don't expect anybody to be patting your back on a daily basis simply because you showed up to work, ate lunch, and went home. It's doing great things that take long times and real creation. And you look for those little bites of the elephant. I hope you understand the analogy. Those little bites of an elephant that revel, and also recognize that the workplace expects you to be ready even though you are not. You are not. They expect you to be innovators. They don't know. They have no concept. They're the old dinosaurs, the old curmudgeons. They've not kept themselves up to date. They haven't done continuing education. They have basically atrophied in place because they expected to hire the next generation to come in with all the new ideas and all the solutions. You've got to be the innovators. And it's up to you to make sure you're able to do that. You have to be the master builders. You have to come up with the new methods, the new materials, the new processes, the new approaches to design bigger, better, faster. Talking about that in your classes? Anybody doing research on that? Yeah. And what's worse is, as I go back to my earlier slide, you also have to manage the risk of climate and environment. And take a deep breath. Also a political environment that changes with the winds. After all, you're working for public works a lot of times. And so what the public wants may not what the public needs. And it's up to you to convince them, to explain to them. And there's a real opportunity in that. If you can get them to understand and respect you as the authority, you will become. Jedi. This one, I don't know if you saw the news last night. I saw where University of Florida had finally canceled the last of its Jedi programs and are moving, take a deep breath, a whole $5 million of its horrendous they spend more on athletics in a minute than they spend on Jedi in a year. But because of Florida doing what it's doing, they move the money out of Jedi. What is Jedi? Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, right? Many of you notice DEI, but I like Jedi because it's easier to remember, and also like Star Wars. So the idea of being a Jedi Knight, an advocate for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, isn't saying this is something about teaching Black History Month or in the month of February or anything like that, or anything other than recognizing that each of us is different and each of us needs something different to succeed. Equity isn't equality. Okay? If I put two brand new hires down at a computer and gave them a new keyboard and a new monitor, two new monitors, maybe three, and a mouse and a printer and the best Wi-Fi in the world, I've given both of them exactly the same. I have treated them equally. And if the one person happens to be blind and the other person happens to have no arms, I have not treated them equitably. I have not facilitated their success. We, who are neither blind or physically impaired, need to be advocates for those who are. But more than that, when we talk about Jedi, we need to recognize the impact of civil infrastructure on not just the environment, birds, trees, hubbers, whatever else, runoff, but the environment, the social environment, the socioeconomic environment. I asked the question, it was already posted, but I'm going to ask it again in a different slide. Given the illustration on the left, what is the best way to go from point A to point B? Now, most people in civil engineering grew up thinking the best way to go from point A to point B is a straight line. And that wasn't the question. The shortest distance between point A and point B is a straight line. The best way is based on a number of factors, including the community through which you transport yourselves. embracing that community, building transportation corridors that don't just get people or goods and services from point A to point B, but then also enhances the environment between point A and point B. So when I asked who was it that built the wrong side of the tracks, the short answer is the generation that preceded me. I'm taking no blame. Civil engineers. Civil engineers built the wrong side of the tracks. They built it because they were only focused on putting down rail and never looked at the impact on the species they would kill, the environment they would rape, and the number of communities they would disenfranchise. Such you ended up with people that were downwind and couldn't move versus people that were downwind and could and did. So you have a socioeconomic schism that'll be created because we put down tracks. And then the people that didn't like the people that moved into the area upwind, moved uphill, up gradient, now we have a social caste system. And responsibility for that is civil engineers. You cannot do that anymore. We need to be respectful for the population. If for no other reason, then there's not enough space not to be recognizing the impact our systems have on the community at large, society at large. So embracing the Jedi principles is that in terms of your design. Lastly, I want to emphasize you, Gen Z. The workplace that you will find in many cases, not all, in many cases, is based on basically a pre-1980s workplace, which was based on a 1910 workplace that Henry Ford created. Okay? It's commoditizing you as a worker bee to produce a product. In the 50s, we took that into the professional room and wound up a bunch of drafting tables, set a bunch of engineers in white shirts and black ties, you've probably seen the photo, and said, go to work, and that's what they did. Okay? It's not the environment any of us wants to go to. It certainly wasn't the one I wanted to go to when I started this profession 40 plus years ago, 50 years ago. The idea of the 80s workplace, though, what does it represent? And this is the one I lay out to you, because this is the one we still have not corrected. In pre-1980, the expectation was there'd be one income per family. Primarily the man, ladies. But there were a few ladies that superseded and the man didn't. Or they may have had a part-time job or did something. And one income. I still remember standing in front of the TV and listening to President Reagan boast about the fact that we're now at a point where everybody can have two jobs. What he was really saying was, if you want to maintain your lifestyle, you have to have two incomes. So the workplace immediately adapted and recognized that the person I'm hiring is actually part of a family that has obligations to little ones, to senior ones, to a spouse, to community relationships and all that other stuff. No. They recognized you as basically that worker bee from 1910 and said, that's it. So recognize that's where you're headed, but it's changing. I'll also quickly point out one of the top 5 countries, one of the top 5 companies in the U.S. for supporting inclusive environments, working environments, is a civil engineering firm, which I won't mention because we're not here to reflect that. And if that weren't worse, here's where the road goes off the road. You have to recognize that right now our estimates are that we're producing less than 5,000, or shortfall 5,000 civil engineers, just civil engineers per year next decade or more. They're not coming out of high school. People coming out of high school aren't going into college. The people coming out of colleges, not enough. Okay? And the demand's increasing because of things like the bipartisan infrastructure law, because of the CHIPS Plus Science Act, because of the Inflation Reduction Act, all of which have been enacted, and the demands are huge. Can you imagine what would happen if I told you that all of the concrete that was going to be available in the state of Washington was going to be used up by one company for an entire year and a half? Welcome to Ohio, because that is exactly what's happening in Ohio right now. All the concrete is being used up for a data center that Amazon's putting in North Ohio to support a chip manufacturing facility that's moving in to North Ohio. And right now they're having to bring concrete in and market and purchase and lock down concrete from adjacent states. So that means you're going to have to adapt to a world that we don't even talk about today. Actually, in the STAR Lab, they are talking a lot about AI and how that's going to impact you. But do you realize that at the end of the day, this border of engineering that we talk about is going to disintegrate as time goes on. And it's going to be an amalgam of different engineering fields. It's going to be an amalgam of technologists, natural scientists, physical scientists, social scientists, all working together, much like they already do over at DOT, to bring projects to bear that meet the public need. Who's going to lead these people? Who's going to be able to understand everything? And who's going to have the professional standing in order to do that? It's got to be you. Team designs are going to be a matter of being developed around infrastructure experts. We need you to pick up that mantra and do that. And then lastly, because of the shortfall in population, recognizing the role of AI, VR, and other enhancements we haven't even talked about yet are going to be part of your everyday conversation. And it's going to take somebody with the professional and ethical standing and technical knowledge to manage and overlook this, so that the public is protected, the safety, welfare of the public is protected, as well as public resources are used effectively, as well as the environment is managed. So it's not about just doing the project right anymore. That's what we worried about during my generation. The process now is doing the right project. When you do a transportation corridor, it's not just a road or a rail. It could also be water or sewer or power or telecommunications. It's a comprehensive network of moving through. When we deal with structures, buildings, it's not just erecting a structure, it's the comprehensive environment and sustainability associated with it. We need you to develop the expertise, the skills, and the experience to become competent. And that competency is oftentimes going to be challenged. And so I'm going to leave you with this question. Well, not really. I'm going to pose this question to you and then answer it. And that is, should you become a professional engineer? My application is yes. Because as a professional engineer, in that team we just talked about, you will be the individual who gets to set the direction. You will be the person who has the vision. You'll be the person responsible. You will be the person who has the dedicated credentials that set yourself apart from everybody else. And as such, it'll be you that moves forward, moves the project forward, ensures the health, safety, and welfare of the public is protected. You're going to be the team lead if you move into this position. And we need you to be involved in that. And you need to take this on if you want to be the change agent, the servant leader in the organization. Oh yeah, by the way, with PE, you get paid a lot. So, is PE the end? No. PE is the beginning. That's establishing your minimum competency. You have to continue to grow, have to continue to learn. Continuing professional competency is part of the question. Certifications will be part of the question. Certificates, which is different. Certifications is much like a professional engineering license. You can go back to the first slide. I'm certified as an environmental engineer. I'm certified as a water resources engineer. And I have to go through recertification every year. I submitted proof that I have maintained my continuing competency at the technical level. Just like I do where I come from with our engineering license. Skill development, professional development. Some people call soft skills, I call them professional skills, and your technical skills will continue to grow. What you're using today, how you go about things today, cannot be done tomorrow. I started out using a slide rule and having to go to a building about this size to get to a computer. I have a computer in my rear end right now, that's bigger than the computer that they have at the university library. I actually had to build my first computer. Turns out, and I built my second one, come to think of it. So with that said, competency comes in a lot of different packages. ASCE, through the Civil Engineering Certification Program, has established a number of these. We're building more. But well ahead of us in the transportation area is TPCB, and certainly their certifications are something to also aspire to. These are both learning modules to help you develop skills, but they are also programs that will help assert your qualifications, your credentials, okay, your competency. And with this, and looking at that, advancing that, then that'll put you in an enviable, if not highly desirable position to move the needle for what it is. Maybe with this last thought, most people said attribute Darwin saying survival of the fittest. Never happened. Never said it. What Darwin did advocate for, though not in explicit terms, was the idea that those who are adaptable are the ones that survive. We need you to be adaptable. What you're learning today is important as a flat platform for you to continue learning for the rest of your life to solve your problems. Because if you don't adapt, we die. Okay? I threw up Mega City 2020 to give you one last chance, future world vision. By the way, that's the artistic rendition of that living building. It's called an urban sequoia, by the way, if you want to go look it up. Urban sequoia. Thanks, folks. I really appreciate the time to talk.
Thank you very much, Professor Truex, for the wonderful vision.
Nailed it.
You people had time to ask questions, in the fireside chat section. Now I would like to introduce our second speaker, Roger Millar. Roger is our secretary at the Washington State Department of Transportation. We have thousands of employees at WashDOT, and the WashDOT operates a very complicated system, like transit, highway, local roads, all kinds of things you can imagine. Roger actually is quite established, internationally recognized expert in both planning and engineering. He's one of the few with both fellows in engineering. He's a fellow of ASC. He's also a fellow of American Institute for Certified Planners. And recently, this has not been widely announced yet, he received the Outstanding Project Leader Award from ASC, and that's the highest honor, in this kind of project or leadership. So now let's invite Roger Millar to share his vision about the future of transportation and also the opportunities and challenges. Roger, please.
PowerPoint. Oh, okay, you just got to push the buttons.
Just in case.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's me. I've been trying to get away from death by PowerPoint, but not this afternoon. I apologize. So again, I wanted to talk about what's going on at the Washington State DOT with a particular perspective on encouraging you to become a part of the team. We have a little over 7,500 people at WashDOT. We are a multimodal transportation agency, and we all like to think we're changing the world. So I'll start with kind of how I got here, and then talk a little bit about transportation. I am a legacy. My father was a civil engineer. He was a combat engineer in the Corps of Engineers. That's my little brother and I at a bridge crossing on the Main River outside of Frankfurt, Germany back in the early 60s. And then me in the middle, that's about where you are today. I was an environmental engineer. I took one transportation class. And when I got out of school, I came to Portland, where I wanted to live. I did not have a job. I was one of those people, they say Portland's where the young go to retire, and that's where I was headed. But I wanted to pick my community, and then I wanted to find work. And when I picked my community and there was no work because of the recession, my father, the colonel, said, "Son, I'll support you for 3 months, and if you don't have a job, you get to join the branch of the military of your choice." So 2 months and 3 weeks into my adventure, I got a call from the city of Portland. "Mr. Millar, yes, I'll take the job." "What's the job?" "Oh, you'll be designing streets." "Sounds good, I can do that." Had never been taught how to design streets, but I was taught how to be an engineer. And now, here I am in my late 50s, I'm Gumby, damn it. This is when I took ordinary sailor training at Washington State Ferries. When I took over as the secretary, the last boat I had dealt with was teaching small boat sailing merit badge at Boy Scout camp. So I went out and learned how to be a sailor because, you know, adapt or die. And that sailor suit will keep me warm in cold water. So I run the Washington State DOT. We're a 7,500 person organization. We spend $5 billion of your money every year on transportation. And I don't do, as secretary, I don't do two things. I do not appropriate the money. The legislature does that. And I don't set the policy. The legislature sets that as well. And our policy goals are preserve the system, keep it safe, stewardship, mobility, economic vitality, and the environment. Those are the policy goals. You would hope that we were investing with those policy goals in mind, and maybe one day we will. But we do spend an awful lot of our money on building new bright shiny objects for you. Groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings are very important to folks. And as you become an engineer, one of the things about being a civil engineer is we're a very people-oriented space. Unlike our colleagues in the other engineering branches, electricals and mechanicals and chemicals, they don't go and deal with people all the time. You know, I have to design with, you know, when I was working for the National Park Service, their mission was to preserve the resource forever and make it available to the public, a hard thing to do. I work for people right now and their mindset is getting reelected every 2 years. That's long-term vision for them. So you will be working with people who have different mindsets than you might have as a steward of the natural and man-made environment. So what are we doing in all of these spaces in terms of meeting our policy goals? We've made a lot of progress. This is stuff that young engineers at WashDOT have been working on. If you've been over Snoqualmie Pass, it's very different from how it used to be. If you go to concerts in the Gorge, the Vantage Bridge, we've been doing work on it, bits and pieces forever, but if you're going to concerts in the Gorge anytime over the next 4 years, it's going to be one lane in each direction, so start early. The interstate bridge replacement down in Vancouver, spanning the river between Vancouver and Portland, that's a huge project for us. That's a $6 to $8 billion project in one place. Revive I-5. We're busy rebuilding Interstate 5 through downtown Seattle while taking all the people that I-5 needs to take. We're going to be redecking the Ship Canal Bridge. Oh boy, if you commute that way, I hope you take the train. We're also rebuilding I-5 from Yesler up to the Ship Canal Bridge, and as soon as the World Cup is done, we're going to start tearing up I-5 from the Ship Canal Bridge all the way up to Northgate, 2 lanes at a time. It's going to be a thrill. We don't just do highways. We're making sure that the Amtrak Cascade service it's better than it was, and it will be better still. We have 300 miles of freight railroad that we own on the east side of the state that we're also investing in. An example of that was the trestle that burned down in the fires last summer. We rebuilt it in 2 months. And we've replaced our land mobile radio system. We've put a lot of energy into ferries, 4 brand new ferries, lots of ferry terminal reconstruction, and a long-range plan for ferries that's truly astounding, again, subject to funding. Safety is a huge part of what we do. The Alaska Way Viaduct, maybe you got to Seattle after we took the viaduct down. You never got to experience the noise and the dirt that was down there on the waterfront. As soon as the city gets done spending our money to rebuild Alaska Way, it's going to be a really, really world-class place. But we took the viaduct down because after the Nisqually earthquake, it was rather evident that the next shake was going to bring it down all by itself. And we did the same thing on 520, the floating bridge. It's not there, that project is not there to annoy people trying to get to and from football games at Husky Stadium. The bridge was seismically vulnerable, and we needed to create lifelines when the big earthquake happens, and it will happen sometime in the next 600 years. People ask me where I want to be. I want to be dead and buried 250 years before it happens. But if it happens on my watch, I got to deal with it. 17,000 people in Western Washington will die in that earthquake. And the health, safety, and welfare of the people that survive will be entirely dependent on whether we can get food to them and medical supplies to them, whether we can get them out. And so we've created seismic lifelines. I-5 is not seismically vulnerable from Tukwila all the way to the university and beyond. When the earthquake happens, I-5 is not going to be there. So 520 will be there. I-405 has been designed that way. I-90 will be there. So we'll be able to get food to you and your colleagues. We'll be able to get you out. That's what we're about. We also deal with it on a day-to-day basis. Our incident response teams provide lots and lots and lots of help to motorists. We're making enhancements in the system. Roundabouts, I like to say when in doubt, roundabout. Roundabouts reduce fatality collisions at intersections by about 90%. People complain about them being installed. If I can eliminate 9 out of 10 fatalities, I'm going to do that. 40% reduction in pedestrian collisions, and on and on and on. They do work. J-turns are another kind of more rural, suburban solution that we're implementing. We do low-cost improvements. These are young engineers working in our offices around the state, doing little things to make people's lives safer. We also are installing work zone speed cameras in all our construction zones. That's coming to you hopefully later this year. We've developed, with help from the University of Washington, the Virtual Coordination Center, which is the integrating of our traffic management center with the city's traffic management center, with Sound Transit's traffic management center, King County Metro's traffic management center, community transit and the like, Seattle PD, Seattle Fire. When something happens on our system, everybody has a common sense of understanding of what's going on. We're sharing information, we're sharing messaging for the public, and we're able to, one, respond to whatever the incident is, and two, inform and move people who are affected by it different ways. We can flex transit schedules, we can send messages on to our variable message signs, we can change traffic signal timing. That's all something that civil engineers are working on. We push a lot of snow. If you're into having a fight with Mother Nature, get into our snow management program. She always wins, but we do a pretty good job of it. And we have managed, in doing what we do, to make what we do safer as well. We have big things that happen from time to time, like the Oso landslide. The 10th anniversary, that's coming up on the 22nd. If you've never been up the Stillaguamish Valley, the memorial there is just astounding. But when that happened, we were there. And then we have our system is idiot resistant, but it's not idiot proof. And people love to put tall things on trucks and drive them under our bridges. And sometimes they succeed and sometimes they fail. We catch half of them and we recover the money for the damage from about 80% of that half that we catch. We have been managing some significant things: the Skagit River Bridge collapse, the Oso landslide, fires, train derailments, dust storms, pass closures, fires on this side of the state, which were unheard of a generation ago. Huge landslide that happened last year up on Mount St. Helens. And again, this is what we do in the engineering space. Our people do a lot of rescues, ferry rescues, the Hood Canal Bridge, we fish people out of the water there. Our maintenance crews do all sorts of stuff, and we're involved with aviation as well. In the stewardship side, the single thing I'm the proudest of as a leader in my space is that we have gotten through COVID so far. In March of 2020, it's interesting, I'm a big transportation demand management guy, and they were talking about spending $1 billion to replace the interchange at I-5 and 101 in the beautiful city of Olympia. The interchange fails twice a day. It fails in the morning when the state workforce travels to the campus, and it fails in the afternoon when they commute back. So in January of 2020, I'm having a fight with the ranking member of the House Transportation Committee on TVW when I said, you know, if we had TDM, you wouldn't need to spend that $1 billion. He go, oh, bull, you're kidding me, you can't make that happen. I said, no, true, if we got people to telework, we wouldn't need to make that happen. And so we were gonna do an experiment with the Thurston Regional Planning Council we called Telework Tuesdays. We were gonna see if we could get everybody on campus to telework 1 day a month. And the first day we chose to telework was the third Tuesday in March of 2020. You may have been there. We caused COVID, I'm sorry. But since then, we sent all of our office people home. Everybody did. About half of my team can't go home. You can't operate a ferry from home. You can't take tickets. And you can't do highway maintenance, incident response, that kind of stuff. So half of my team stayed out face-to-face with people through the worst of the pandemic and remain out face-to-face with people today. And COVID's still with us. My mom is 91 and she just got home from the hospital having survived a bout of COVID last week, which was really, really scary. But COVID happened and the state didn't stop. For most of the people in Washington State, COVID was an inconvenience. And for a lot of people, it was an opportunity. Oh, I can work from home. I can stay on Bainbridge. I don't have to ferry boat in to work because my boss is encouraging me to stay at home. I could maybe get a house in Suncadia and not have to come into Seattle at all. And then there were the essential workers, the overlooked people in our society that were still on the bus at 5 in the morning getting into work. We got everybody there. We got food here. We got our construction stopped and restarted in a safe way. We put our protocols in place. It's been phenomenal. But one of the things that's come out of COVID is all of our employees that went home have the option of staying there. If you work at the Washington State DOT and you do work you can do from anywhere, you have the opportunity to do that work from anywhere. So my headquarters building in Olympia, the second week of March of 2020, 685 people reported to that building. Last week I was there on a Wednesday, there were 42 people in the building. The same 685 were working, and they're actually working harder and more productive. But young couples are able to split their shift, and one takes care of the kids in the morning and one takes care of the kids in the afternoon, and they don't have a child care cost. And they don't have a commuting cost. And as long as I'm secretary, that's the way it's going to stay. And what's interesting about it is we have people that join our organization just because of that opportunity. And I have people that regularly email me, Roger, I was offered 30% more, but they want me to come to the office 3 days a week, and I told them no. So something we learned from COVID. We have reorganized our organization. We are a multimodal transportation agency. You know, if I have done 4 things in my life that I'm really proud of. I dreamed up the Portland streetcar down the way in Portland, Oregon. I was the second director of the National Complete Streets Coalition and really made it a national movement. We helped mainstream it. I did the first rural bus rapid transit system in the United States, the Glenwood Springs to Aspen system, which is the second largest system in Colorado in terms of ridership. Denver being the first. A community of 120,000 people has the second highest ridership in the state. And then in the DOT space, I've been involved in making DOTs more innovative. You know, you think we're kind of ponderous and we move slow, but we have done some amazing stuff. We created an urban mobility access and mega programs group in the Central Puget Sound. Young engineers there are working on the 520 bridge. They're working on bus rapid transit on 405. They're working on connecting the ports up with the Puget Sound Gateway project. We're wrapping up, you know, the Alaska Way Viaduct, the tunnel, and all the good work that Bertha did for us. They also manage our relationship with Sound Transit. I sit on the Sound Transit board, but A lot of the new light rail is in our right of way, and we've been managing that. We manage the toll system, and tolling is kind of an interesting thing. Nobody likes it, but we move 35% more people in the peak hour on Interstate 405 north of Bellevue than we do on I-5 north of Seattle. Same physical infrastructure, we're moving 35% more people using a managed lane system. We created an Office of Equity and Civil Rights. When I came on board, we were very passive about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is now one of our 3 strategic plan focus areas. My 3 strategic plan focus areas are workforce, diversity, equity, inclusion, and resilience. We have gotten to I think, a very good space in that space. We have another division called Multimodal Development and Delivery, which aligns the various places in the life cycle of a project with the various modal choices that are out there, hopefully making them equal. We created an active transportation division. We created a technology services division. We're slowly but surely changing the staffing at the DOT. When I came on board, we had roughly 10% people of color. We've got a 50% increase. If we were reflective of the state of Washington, we would be about 27% people of color. We've gone from 10 to 15. I'm proud of that. We've still got a ways to go. About 19% of the construction and engineering firms in Washington State are owned by women and minorities, disadvantaged businesses. When I came on board, we were hitting about 11% participation. We're at 19% right now. On the state side, where we have this Initiative 200, which prohibited us from having race and gender specific goals, we've used every trick in the book to go from 3% participation when I came on board to about 11% right now. Good things are happening there. In the mobility space, we've got projects and programs all over. We got the HOV lanes in Tacoma. We're expanding Highway 12 out in the Snake River Valley. We're doing a slew of projects in the I-405-167 corridor. We're building a bus rapid transit system from Linwood all the way around to Burien in partnership with Sound Transit while we rebuild the highway and put in express toll lanes. We're doing work in Spokane, we're doing work with ferries, we're doing work to connect the Port of Tacoma and the Port of Seattle with warehousing. A lot of people look at this brand new highway between Puyallup and Tacoma as a sprawl-inducing thing. If it's not managed right, it could be, but it connects the Port of Tacoma with all of the warehousing and distribution in the Kent Valley. And my hope is that by creating good family wage jobs in South King County and Pierce County, the people who live in South King County and Pierce County can ride a bike or take transit a short distance to a family wage paying job as opposed to getting into a car and driving up into King County to work like they do now. We're working on making driving a truck something that's desirable again. All of us are incredibly reliant on trucks. And we have absolutely no respect for the people that drive trucks. We had to actually have a state law passed requiring businesses that accept delivery by truck to allow the truck drivers to use the restrooms in the facilities. They were prohibited, they were denied access to a bathroom while the truck that they drove in was unloaded. It's unbelievable stuff that goes on. We have a lot of stuff going on. About 40% of the federal money that comes to Washington State in the transportation space is doled out by our department to local government. We're doing work again in tolling and active transportation. We're looking at improving Amtrak Cascades while at the same time we're working on a high-speed ground transportation system that would get you from Portland, Oregon to Vancouver, British Columbia in 2 hours. That would be truly game-changing. It's about a $50 billion project. And everybody goes, $50 billion, we've never spent that. We own, we're approaching $300 billion worth of infrastructure that we own. If I added a lane to I-5 in each direction, border to border, it's $110 billion. If I built a third airport in Western Washington, The airport would be 25 billion inside the fence, and then we have to connect it to the rest of the state. No matter what we do, as we absorb 3 million new people in Western Washington, we're going to be investing $100 billion in how they get around. And if you're a young engineer working in Western Washington after you graduate, you're going to be a part of investing $100 billion, and hopefully with your help, we'll do it right. We also spend a lot of time on getting more out of what we have through transportation demand management and transportation system management. I would really encourage you to look at that. We have reduced vehicle miles traveled per capita in Washington state more in the last 10 years than any other state in the country. The average Washingtonian drives 1,100 miles a year less than they did 10 years ago because of the investments we've made and the policies we've put in place. We are decarbonizing the space. We have a carbon reduction strategy. We're electrifying all of the Washington state ferries. We're electrifying all of our transit fleets. We're electrifying the highway system. We're electrifying our ports. A lot is going on in this space. Now, a highway jam full of electric cars is still a highway jam full of cars, and we've got to deal with that. And a tech bro driving a great big Rivian around with enough battery in it to fuel a dozen Priuses, that's a problem too. But I mean, I think we're doing some good things in this space, and I think we're gonna get that right. But we have to think about strategic materials. We have to think about recycling. We have to think about social equity. That's all an interesting space for you as young engineers to think about. Maybe that's where I make my mark. We also have the Climate Commitment Act here in Washington State. It's a little controversial. People think it's made their gasoline more expensive. It's paying for our ferry electrification system for the 5 new boats that we have coming. It's paying for our innovative partnerships and alternative fuels. It's paying for decarbonizing freight and ports. It's put $400 million since 2023. Just between 2023 and June of next year, we're putting $400 million into public transportation all over the state. We're putting almost $115 million into active transportation all over the state. As we do this work, working at the DOT, we are nationally, internationally recognized as being the best at what we do. And the folks that work at our agency get to be a part of being the best of what we do. I'm sending a young woman back to a conference to accept some accolades for the virtual coordination center that she was a part of building. I went back to get the award for the 520 floating bridge and for the Alaska Way Viaduct. That's a picture of Bertha, the tunnel boring machine, one of my least favorite things in the world. I'm so glad that she's gone. Challenges, we have a staffing challenge. Our program is huge and our workforce is the same as it was in 2015. That is an opportunity for you. We don't pay real well in the market, but when I talk to young engineers, that you can leave here and go work for a consultant and make more money than if you worked for me. But I spent 15 years of my career as a consultant, and I was hugely successful as a consultant. And the reason I was hugely successful as a consultant is I have gray hair. I had prematurely gray hair. Because what every consultant wants you to know is that you are their only client, which is a lie, and that the best people are on it. You've got our most experienced people, which is also a lie. So when you become a consulting engineer as a young person, you're in the back office because the guys with the gray hair don't want their clients to see that young people are doing all the work. So you won't be out in the field, you won't be at the meetings, you won't be, you'll be doing work that somebody else is going to be taking credit for. Like I said, I took credit for 15 years. Come work for me, and that gray-haired old guy is going to be coming into your office because you're going to be their client. And you're going to be responsible for all of the projects that I talked about. When I first came to the DOT 8 years ago, I had project managers with 30 years experience. I had construction team leaders with 30 years experience. I go out, I'm leaving here this afternoon to go over to Chelan for our PE's conference. I guarantee you that there won't be anybody around that table who's been at the DOT as long as I have, except for a few very senior people. We have a lot of new people. Scary amounts of responsibility. Scares me as the one accountable for it all. But in your place, you get to play with the big toys right off the bat, which is pretty cool. We've had staffing challenges in ferries. The international maritime industry is a place where there's a lot of shortage in terms of staffing. And you can't just walk onto one of the boats. Certification is hard, but we've made a lot of strides in that space. We are doing pay increases. We're investing in bringing young people into the space. We have scholarships, internships. If you're going to be in school for a while longer, come be an intern. It's an interesting place to be and a great add to your resume. We're doing a lot of stuff in the ferry space. If you say, heck, I'm tired of being a civil engineer, I want to drive a boat, come on down. We got a job for you there too. It's not just us. As Dennis pointed out, we're short engineers every year. We're short construction workers every year. We have a pre-apprenticeship support services program that we use to bring people into the construction trades. We require all of our contracts, the labor hours worked on their contracts, that 15% of those hours be worked by apprentices. And the apprentices who work on our contracts, 45% of the apprentice hours are performed by women and people of color. A lot of them that came into our program through our pre-apprenticeship support services program. So that's where you find out about working with WashDOT. Follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Twitter, follow the state of Washington. You're paying taxes, you might as well get something out of it. Come on down and be a part of a great team. Thanks. Dennis in the middle.
Thank you, Roger. Certainly, you see a lot of great opportunities. So now let's move into the Q&A session, and we invite also Dennis to come sit in the front. If you have any questions, so don't be shy, just please question them. Sean?
Mr. Wallace, this is mostly for you. So I was going through all of the electric vehicles versus going more into, thank you very much. Go more into the going from the combustion engines. And we're seeing that the tax rate for gasoline is staying the same while we're doing a flat rate for the electric vehicle registrations. As we're shifting more towards the electric vehicles, are we going to see some type of almost like an interruption when it comes to revenue for the state when it comes to projects due to that?
Yes, the short answer. The question was about transforming from an internal combustion driven transportation system to an electric transportation system and its impact on our tax revenues, our ability to fund projects. It's really interesting when you look at the state's policy goals. Every one of the state's policy goals, if implemented, drives down the consumption of gasoline, which drives down the gas tax that we collect, which lessens the amount of money that we have to do our projects. We will, as a country, as a state, Oregon's done it, Utah's done it, Hawaii's thinking about it. We will break free from the gas tax at some point. We have studied road user charges here in Washington, and we know how to do it. We know the technology. And there are other alternatives. It could be a sales tax on electricity. It could be any number of other ways to raise the money. But at the end of the day, you need to raise the money somehow. The questions on road user charges aren't so much the technology, and it's the policy issues. Mm-hmm. And that's, again, civil engineering versus other kinds of engineering. The electrical engineer has figured out the technology, and then they're on to something else. What we have to figure out is how to get people to accept it.
Right.
And is it a flat rate? So do you pay the same per mile if you're driving a Prius or a Rivian? Do you pay the same rate per mile if you're on a country road in the middle of the night, or if you're on I-5 commuting into downtown Seattle all by yourself? How does it work with congestion pricing? How does it work with our toll system? Do we set it up to discourage people driving heavier vehicles? Do we set it up to discourage people driving alone? Do we set it up to discourage people commuting by car during peak hours? Those are all policy questions, and we'll work our way through it. The engineers will be at the table, but that's why it hadn't happened now. All the easy stuff's been done. That's going to be a tough nut to crack.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Dennis, you have any thoughts on that too?
Actually, I'd like to go a different direction if for no other reason than my personal bias. And I realize there's a lot in this era of transition that has yet to be resolved. When we talk about electrification, Roger, where, and for that matter, Dr. Wong, where does Washington stand with regard to hydrogen?
We're implementing hydrogen fueling here in Washington State as well. The Columbia River dams provide a really unique opportunity for low-cost generation of hydrogen. But again, it's the policy stuff. There's a PUD outside of Wenatchee that wants to generate hydrogen, put it in bottles, put it on trucks, and truck it over here to sell to you to put in your hydrogen-fueled vehicle. What I'd like them to do with that hydrogen is put it in the tanks of the drayage vehicles that collect the fruit around Wenatchee and bring them down into the warehouses. What I'd like to see them do is generate hydrogen all night long and then use the hydrogen to produce electricity to meet peak demand all day long in kind of a bottled pump storage facility, if you will. What I'd like to see is our snowplows fueled by hydrogen, because that battery electric for a big rig like one of our snowplows, it doesn't have the range that I need, and it takes too long to recharge the battery, whereas you can replace bottles or plug it in and go with the hydrogen. So I think, PACCAR up in Mount Vernon, PACCAR is the largest manufacturer of trucks in the world, I believe, certainly in the United States. They are doing hydrogen fuel cell and battery electric trucks for their US and their North American market and their European market. I've had the opportunity to drive them. They're really cool. They're also about 10,000 pounds heavier right now than their diesel counterparts because of the size of the batteries. So until the battery technology advances to reduce that weight, we either have to accept a 10% reduction in load carrying, they can only carry 70,000 pounds instead of 80,000 pounds, or we have to accept heavier trucks on our roads beating our highways up even faster than they are today.
Thanks.
So certainly, there's a lot of different opinions, right? So let's see if there are any other questions from the audience. If you don't have any, you can think about it. I can raise a question to our two guests. So following your vision, what are the most demanded skills now and in the near future, in your opinion? Maybe Dennis use that?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to pin down. It really goes back to the idea that to classify fields really matters in the sense that we really have to be more of a Renaissance person, really, is the term that was used when I was growing up. An individual that is capable of not necessarily knowing everything about everything. The old adage, you can be a master of all things. Was it knowledge of all things, master of none? The idea is that we really need to become more masters of everything and recognize that with information resources that we have at our fingertips now. Mm-hmm. When I grew up, as a matter, if I wanted to learn something, I had to find a library and open a book someplace. You have to open your iPhone and do a browser search, not to advertise any particular company. And at the end of the day, that resource is generally easy to verify and critically look at. And so being able to think critically, know where the resources are, trusted resources are. This is where I put in my ASCE plug, because we have a horrendous library at ASCE, all of which is available to the membership in various levels, various ways. Dating back to really the origin of publication at ASCE, we've just recently digitized our entire library. Not that I advocate going back to a 1905 document on transportation. But I think it's really a matter of know the resources, get the resources, be able to think critically, and at that point
have a good understanding. The piece that you get now in a formal education is get that framework, that foundation for what it is you want to do, what has been done, and how you can make it better tomorrow.
Thank you, Roger.
Yeah, learn how to learn and be that Renaissance person. You know, Kennedy said one time he had all these Nobel Prize winners at dinner at the White House, and he said, it's the greatest collection of minds around this table since Thomas Jefferson dined here alone. You know, you think about the civil engineering landmarks that people think about historically, the Eiffel Tower, the New York City subway system, the Golden Gate Bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, the Panama Canal. Those were conceived by civil engineers and marketed by civil engineers and financed by civil engineers and planned by civil engineers and cajoled and loved to death and designed and built by civil engineers. And civil engineers, we as a profession have narrowed and narrowed and narrowed our focus in the life cycle of the constructed project, in the things that go on. You know, I'm a certified planner. The planning profession exists because the engineering profession abandoned the space. So you have the opportunity as a professional in engineering to go really deep in a narrow field. I would suggest, unless you absolutely know that this is your passion, don't go deep until you've had the opportunity to go broad and see everything that goes on. When I was undergrad, I was deep in biological treatment of industrial waste. I took all my classes were chemical engineering, all my classes were biology, pre-med chemistry, that kind of thing. And when I got out of school, the opportunity to do work was designing streets. So, you know, and I took one transportation class, and to date, I've had one transportation class in a university environment. So think about the fact that, yeah, you can go real deep and hope that that stays marketable, or you can go real broad in your scale. But think about, you know, the things I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who can solve a problem and explain how they solved it to the people that they're working for. We had a time I was at the agency about 2 months. I was the deputy. I was deputy for 4 months before I got promoted to secretary. But Christmas Eve, 7 in the morning, the state maintenance engineer comes in and says, Roger, all the mountain passes are closed. There's 30 feet of snow at the top of Snoqualmie Pass in the middle of the highway. What are we going to do? And, you know, down in North Bend, there's just a dusting and the row of state troopers and cars full of presents and screaming kids, are we there yet? Because what does everybody want to do on Christmas Eve? Everybody on the west side wants to go east, everybody east wants to come west. I said, we've got to do a couple things. We've got to keep our people safe. We've got to keep the public safe. Once we know we're doing that, we can open the road. But take lots of pictures and tell people what we're doing. And people were complaining at 7 in the morning. By 10 o'clock, they were handing holiday cards, car to car, signing them for our employees while our employees solved the problem. So what you need to think about as a young professional is, while you solve that problem of how to pay for the system when we electrify the ferry system, or how we get everybody to decarbonize the city by walking and biking and taking transit instead of driving, the rest of that. If you don't know how to communicate what you're doing, you're going to lose the public and you're going to lose the fight. So stay general, learn how to talk, learn how to write, learn how to be interesting at a cocktail party. You know, it's really important that you be well-rounded people and that you are a part of the society that you're advancing.
That's wonderful advice, Roger. Thank you so much. And certainly, as you guys see, civil engineering is integrating a lot of different technologies to solve problems we're facing. It may not be something you could be just sitting in the room, try to imagine and come up with a great solution. And then your capability of sensing the surrounding environment and also identifying the most appropriate solutions, being able to put them together and with a good reason on why you believe this is good. I think that may be something quite important in the future. All right, so any other questions? Yeah. Shane, yeah.
Just a quick question regarding kind of like, going into transportation myself personally, and I've seen kind of a shift in both mindset and goals for especially the state of Washington when it comes to the transportation systems in the state, whether it be implementing FIST passage or kind of like what you were talking about earlier with the high-speed rail network that would connect Vancouver to Portland, or even here locally with the light rail system. However, with that being said, kind of like with these new technologies and new systems being implemented, still having people and education systems that primarily focus on more traditional transportation routes, whether it be roadways, highways, et cetera. And so I guess my question for you is, how exactly do you see moving forward, kind of getting that more broadening that transportation sector and implementing people who are have a little bit more of that background into I guess more traditional sense, and kind of moving forward and with our new implementations of various technologies. And then also, what advice do you have for kind of staying broad, especially for undergrad, and to that when eventually the next big thing does come, because we all know it will here in the next few decades, being able to stay broad and be able to adapt.
Thank you. Maybe Roger, you start with this one.
Sure. Yeah. The way to change the world is to get in there and change the world. You know, when you think about the change that's coming, the change is coming because the response to climate change demands it. The change is coming because people want it. You know, there was automated cars is a thing these days, and I did a scan tour. I was over in London a couple of years ago, and the Ministry of Transport in the UK asked the people of London, do you see automated cars in London in your future? And they said, no, we don't want more cars in London. We want sidewalks that work. We want transit systems. We want to be able to ride a bicycle safely. We don't, electric, hydrogen, fuel cell, whatever it is, it's just another car. We don't need that. If I owned a farm, maybe I'd want an automated car, right? But the industry, think of how many people build cars, sell cars, work on cars, fuel cars, market cars. It's a huge, huge industry that is going to be resistant to change until they find a way to participate in and profit from that change. That's just the reality that we've got. So you've got that up against the fact that a lot of people would like to live and work and shop, all within 20 minutes of where they lay their head down at night. Not because they have to, because they can choose to be that way, and they can get around different ways. I walk to work. I drive a car when I come to things like this. I usually take the train, but I'm going over to Chelan this afternoon after this. We need to walk that talk, and two, we need to encourage people who are into change to be a part of making the change happen. But you have to be, it's going to be evolution, it's not going to be revolution. It's driven by climate science, it's driven really by the market. I save money by converting ferries from diesel to electric. They're cheaper to operate, they don't break down as often, they're going to last longer, they're quieter, they don't disturb the orcas and on. There are all sorts of good market reasons for that. But if you're not there on the team making the pitch, I have an active transportation director named Barb Chamberlain. She has been in the bicycling and walking, she's committed her life to it. And I was able to get her to come to WashDOT and start that division and grow that division, and she is making change happen. Dongo Chang, who used to be the Seattle traffic engineer, is now the state traffic operations engineer. He is changing the world, and he chose to come to DOT and be a part of that. And that's how we make change happen. It's hard work, but it can be rewarding work.
Yeah, let me pick up and amplify what Robert just said. And the way I would frame it is, if you want to see this change happen, the change is left to you. You have to be the change agent. When I was young, coming through school, much about the same time I guess Roger was, not too far away for that matter, as I understand. I went to Virginia Tech, he's UVA, go Wives, go Hokies.
Virginia graduates think that Virginia Tech graduates make excellent employees.
Which shows how little they know about reality. Anyway, but the idea is we were taught to basically go to work, keep our mouth shut, keep our head down, and we were really taught not to engage, which is part of the industrial mindset that works okay for the other disciplines, but for civil, not so much. We deal with policymakers, and we have to interact with them in a productive way, regardless of what their politics are, regardless of what our politics are. We have to be able to face it. In fact, ASCE just concluded our annual fly-in into DC, where we bring some, in this case, 280 people into Washington, DC, to go up on the Hill and advocate for infrastructure on your behalf, on the state's behalf, on the nation's behalf. Not because it's civil engineering, but because it's the right thing to do. And we are recognized on the Hill as honest brokers. We, civil engineers, are recognized on the Hill as honest brokers because we've expressed to them and have demonstrated repeatedly how good investment in sustainable infrastructure is about protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public, ensuring national security, and also advancing economic and community development. It's now our responsibility as individuals to do that. When we talk with our parents, when we talk with our friends, when the conversation comes up on TV, and there happens to be somebody else in the room, as opposed to what I do is I just talk to the TV, and let them know that this is what we do, this is why it's important, and then change will happen. If we leave it up to somebody else to do it for us, nobody will. It's up to us.
Yeah, I fully agree with what Roger and Dennis just said. And certainly Dennis quoted like Darwin's word, right? Like adapt or die. I would say adapt and actively adapt. We proactively adapt, right? So we identify what is the good future, right? So today's seminar topic is engineering the future, like design a sustainable tomorrow, right? So if we design it, we know where we go, right? So, and certainly we can be adapting ourselves both from the thinking style to like the skill set, and we can lead ourselves, lead the whole society toward a more sustainable tomorrow. So any last minute question? So we have a brief reception afterwards, right? So we have pizzas arrived, so you don't want to make that cold. So any questions before we end up?
There's one in the middle and one in the back.
Oh, okay, sorry, I did not see. Go ahead, yeah.
Thank you. Hello. As a young engineer, I'm wondering, how did you get to the positions of leadership where you are now? And what do you advise for the next generation wanting to make those changes and get to those positions where they feel like they have more influence?
That's great. So maybe Dennis, you start.
Why don't you start, Nick?
Leadership question.
And you cultivate a natural while I sit here and flounder. Sure, okay. Ability, it's knowledge, it's skills, it's demonstrating one's ability to address issues and solve problems. People. You've got to be able to interact with supervisors and subordinates in a way, I think, that's both respectful and engaging. And then visibility. You've got to, you can have all of the talent in the world, but if nobody ever sees it, you'll never be recognized for it or never be elevated. So get out, get engaged, be involved in those processes where you're dealing with individuals who you may be a little afraid of, but at the same time, you're giving them an opportunity to see you and put of course, your best foot forward. Recognize that what they're looking for is somebody that can manage. But let me also emphasize, unfortunately, a lot of people are selected for leadership positions who maybe make great managers, but really suck at leadership, okay? leadership is about, the difference between a manager and a leader is the vision, or lack thereof. I have a slide for another presentation I often use, where it talks about a civil engineering team going into the jungle to build a road, and they were exceedingly efficient at getting the road built, and had made great progress in managing the resources, and the road construction was going faster and costing less than expected. And one of the individuals on the construction team decided to climb a tree to just admire the work that they had achieved over the past days, weeks, months, whatever, it doesn't matter, of work, only to yell down to everybody on the ground, "We're going the wrong way." Okay? Without a sense of where you need to go, without a vision of what you hope to achieve, without an understanding of the vision, mission, and goals of what you're trying to do and making sure they all align, you're never going to be a leader. And I think that's I think to me that attributes, ability, and vision are the things you need to be working on.
Yeah, you need to, learn how to learn. Be lucky. I was extremely fortunate. I was getting ready to join the Air Force, and I wound up a transportation designer. I tried to fight my way back into water and wastewater. I actually had arranged a promotion and a transfer to do that, and I was lucky that the city engineer had a thing that he did as a professional of mentoring young people from time to time, and he told me, "Roger, if you stay with transportation, I'll make you a leader in that space." That was in 1985. I was a transportation engineer 2 at the city of Portland. 1987, I was a transportation engineer 6, and I had a staff of 120 people because I picked my boss. And that's the other, if you pick your boss, people are interviewing you for jobs. Mm-hmm. Pick who you work for, because who you work for is how you're going to learn and how you're going to move forward. I left the city because I was worried about getting stuck in the retirement trap that public employees have. You get to a place where you can't leave. And the problem I had with that is the next job for me was to be the city engineer, which was a politically appointed job, but I'd have to hang on to it for 25 years in order to retire with a pension. That wasn't going to happen. So I went into the consulting world. I worked for a brilliant man. And then I made a mistake. I had a friend that I wanted to go kind of multinational with. I became a vice president of a multinational engineering firm. I found out I was one of 250 vice presidents of the multinational engineering firm, and that no matter what they said they were in the business for, it was anything for a buck. And it was top line, bottom line, profit. I stuck it out for about 18 months. I was living outside of Aspen, Colorado. I moved back to DC. I was living in Arlington, which was a great place. But my daughter came in one day and said, "Dad, do you know what happened at school? I found out there are people here that drive an hour to go skiing. Dad, that's awful." I said, "I got to get her back to the mountains." So I took an 80% cut in pay, and I moved from being a vice president of a multinational engineering firm to being the community development director of a ski town in Idaho, McCall, Idaho. Really cool place. And then I had an opportunity to work for somebody that I respected and became the planning director for Missoula, Montana. I was working for the mayor there, who was brilliant. He was just a brilliant man. I ran the city planning office, the county planning office, and the metropolitan planning organization. I did that for 4 years. And then I met a guy named Jeff Anderson, who was the president of Smart Growth America. I can learn from this guy. So I left Missoula and I went to Smart Growth America as a vice president. I did the Complete Streets Coalition, and I did a thing called the Innovative DOT. And then in 2015, I had the opportunity to come to WashDOT. In 2016, I'm the Secretary of Transportation. I left the corporate world in 2005, took an 80% cut in pay, and here I am, Secretary of Transportation in 2024, and I'm almost making as much money as I did as the vice president of that company. I'm so much a happier man for it. I would encourage you, trust the luck, take a chance. You need a job, but you don't need this job, and hire your boss.
Thank you.
So these are great advice, and certainly they are very successful leaders. I can just offer several of my thoughts, maybe from the academic side, right? So there's also the leaders, right? Maybe you consider the very successful leaders could be those Nobel Prize winners, right? So I think vision is very important. You need to find the right topic, envision the future, and what's the best way of getting there. The second thing, I think, is find who you work with, right? So Roger mentioned pick up your leader, right? So find somebody you really consider you want to be similar to that person, right? So get close, learn everything from the person, build your own capability and skill. And the third thing I think is you need to be very patient. Don't be just short temper. I want to be leader. Why I'm still in the same position, right? So if you really want to be leader, you demonstrate you're a wonderful leader. People recognize you because you have that capability, because you have the great vision. And then you will be naturally a leader, right? So this will bring you to the right position. I think patience and insist are both very important. I know we're getting to the end of today's lecture and seminar, and I just want to ask Roger and Dennis, maybe the last sentence you want to recommend what they should be doing to build a successful future. Maybe 1 or 2 sentences.
Have fun as if your life depended on it, because it does. The adapt or die, that's real. But those who adapt are going to find themselves over time in a world full of adaptive people. It's a lot of fun. It can be a lot of fun. Don't do it unless it is.
What I tell folks, and told for many years when I was as department head and since, is find your passion. Figure out what you feel rewarded for. Determine what it is that you want to achieve. Because you're only on this planet for a certain period of time. And enjoying what you do is certainly part of that passion. In fact, you want to find a profession, not a job. You want to find yourself working in something that you feel rewarded personally for having done. And that passion provides another component for your success, and that is the ability to push through adversity. You'll find yourself, if you're passionate about something, then when adversity presents itself, it won't be as big a deterrent. For that matter, it certainly wouldn't stop you from achieving what it is that you want to do. So being passionate about something, finding that area of the profession that you think you can be of greatest impact, if that's what you're interested in. I advocate for working in the in the public sector, and organizations such as WashDOT, because you are impactful. And if you find that it resonates with your soul, that's great. I also advocate for going to graduate school and getting a PhD. That's my academic side. Because for some people, that aspect of discovery and creating new knowledge is something that's exciting and fun as well. And then go to work for WashDOT, and you'll be success twice. So find the passion. That's my short answer.
All right, so I would like to wrap up today's PacTrans and CUT-C seminar. Dennis traveled long distance to Seattle, and Roger is a super busy man. He's actually the secretary, as mentioned, also the past president of AASHTO, ASC, Transportation Development Institute, etc. A lot of things, but he still considers this is important, coming to our university students and other audience. Build our future workforce, right? So let's give them a big round of applause to appreciate it. All right, so now is our reception. You see the pizza is behind, at the back row. Feel free to help yourself. Thank you very much.